All right, greetings. My name is Diego Torresicle. Welcome to another video. This one is a study session dedicated to studying rationality, the world of rationality. And this idea of rationality I've learned throughout most of my education, whether it was studying like ethics and philosophy in middle school and high school, or whether it's kind of understanding the reason behind why we apply something like science or mathematics. Both are similar, but they're slightly different because in science they focus on empirical evidence, and then mathematics focuses on proofs and on these truth statements and these conjectures and axioms and so on. And so, rationality, the way I understand it, and we can verify this by asking ChatGPT or asking kind of Google searching this question. But a question I have probably for y'all, if whoever watches this video, is rationality, it's a yes or no question, is rationality an umbrella term for all of the space that involves constructive cognitive thinking, basically? Whether it is basically some form of like a advanced architecture of practical thoughts. So whether this is working on basic math problems, whether it's working on basic scientific problems, whether it's working on engineering problems, maybe problems that you're working as a handyman or craftsman. If you're a plumber or if you're an electrician, you're still working on practical problems. If you're a person with being able to work with wood, if you're a carpenter, your ability to cut wood and measure and use measurements and so on and so forth and use tools. I wonder, does all of this effectively fall under rationality? Or is rationality something that goes in tandem to something like philosophy? And so this is, I don't want to go too deep down the rabbit hole, but I think, now that we're here, I think I might as well ask these questions to something like, ChatGPT or any AI software for that matter. Um, but recognize that AI is basically a pool of human knowledge, and it's tailored to specific questions. So it's a more advanced Google search is the way I understand it. So I think it is a worthwhile investment to see what kind of insights can we gain, given that they work with such large data sets of human knowledge. But two things I want to show real quick before we dive into rationality. I wanted to simply show the map of philosophy. I've showed this before, but I think it's a really impressive map that just showed me. This is from ResearchGate, which is really cool. Basically, it's a website that has a lot of what I believe to be peer-reviewed scientific papers. But this is the map. I kind of want to get a higher definition version of it. We have internet problems, internet connection issues. I think I'm going to, let's see, save the image, and then maybe I can open it. But I really want to take a close look at this map. Because I've also spent a lot of my years studying philosophy. The map is not very high definition. Here it says there's a lot of pixels though. So I'm trying to understand why we can't get a high definition map. Maybe I'm gonna have to look for another version of it. And yeah, so these video series, the way I'm gonna have it formatted is really me just kind of diving into a subject and lecturing or teaching to the best of my ability, with the intention of learning this stuff myself. I think a very valuable skill set that I've learned is that if you want to understand something really well, the best thing you can do is teach. So I think I'm really striving for like a win-win here. Teaching anyone on YouTube or online these concepts or being able to explain these concepts helps me as much as I hope it helps you. But I see the map right here, but I want to find, I might have to go into Google search and see if we can pull up this map. because it's an incredibly fascinating map. Maybe for future videos, what I'll do is I'll simply download it and keep it stored on my computer. Um, it says complete the security check below, but it didn't show up last time. Here we go. Had to be a little bit more patient, it seems. Just making sure that I'm not an AI. Okay, yes, here it is. Excellent, excellent. Such a beautiful map. Such a beautiful map. It really blows my mind. So I'm gonna pull up the map here. I don't know who created it or who invented it, but here we go. And basically, hopefully you can see all of that. I want to make sure it is as clear as possible and make sure that my face is not blocking the image. But basically, it's a reference map with areas, and it's a map of philosophy. And I don't know, the story behind this map. Who created it? Why was it built? It says here the article investigates what happens when philosophy of science meets and begins to establish connections with two formal research methods such as game theory and network science. My goodness. I mean, human science today is incredible, frankly. The vastness of it. It's so vast. Game theory and apparently the philosophy of science. I would think that the way I understand it is that science is a philosophy. And in fact, we have many forms of philosophy. But I guess a good way to, start is basically figure out what is philosophy. What is philosophy? And it says philosophy is the love of wisdom, a disciplined critical inquiry using reason to explore fundamental questions about existence, knowledge, values, reason, mind, and language, aiming for deeper understanding and clearer thinking about life and the world. So, based off of that definition of philosophy, I would argue that studying rationality. I guess I don't know what the difference between rationality and reason are. So there's a number of questions that we can explore that I think make this video worthwhile. This is not even what I originally intended to do, but I find that these kind of prerequisites help a lot to build a foundation. So question one is rationality and reason the same thing? That's one question. Question two is rationality an umbrella term for philosophy? And I think those are the two questions that I have at the present moment. Is rationality and reason the same thing? My guess is that it's no. My guess is that it's no. There's a slight difference there. I know that rationality and being reasonable are technically two different things, because reason, it uses a little bit more intuition. I think reason has a more intuitive nature about it, while rationality is really focused on structured objective thinking of some kind, something like this. And then I guess another question I could ask is rationality and reason the same thing? And then I guess as a follow-up question, kind of like a 1B question, is what is the relationship of rationality and reason with intuition, right? Because my guess is that the difference between reason and rationality are that reason is more intuitive based. Is more intuitive, while rationality is more focused on objective structures of, we'll call it thinking. I'll put thinking in quotation marks. But like, I'm not even sure what thinking even is, frankly. Anyways, is rationality an umbrella term for philosophy would be the other question. And we have a definition for philosophy here, which would suggest that philosophy explores a lot, but it's an critical inquiry using reason. It's not a inquiry using rationality necessarily. So I want to copy this quote here, if I can. For some reason it won't let me copy it. There we go. There we go. And I'm just going to save this file, basically dedicated to some kind of exploration of rationality. Exploring rationality. And I'm going to basically dedicate questions regarding rationality, reason, and philosophy, and intuition, as well as intuition. Hopefully I can save a file with commas. Okay, very good. All right, and so let's dive in. I think this is a good starting place. Now, the objective I have for this particular video, which is going to be the one first of many, is going to be a video dedicated to studying what is rationality, coined or taught by this person named Rob Bensinger. And I had his website open, and he wrote a really interesting book called Rationality from AI to Zombies. And I just can't help but notice that in my exploration for computer science, in my exploration for mathematics, I've had an intuitive exploration for philosophy, and I'm beginning to realize that I may have even had a deeper exploration of wanting to understand rationality, because I think a lot of philosophy can also be very intuitive based, which brings us back to this map, right? We have this big map that shows us all these different parts of philosophy. So we have something like epistemology, which I'm not sure what that even is. We can look it up. Epistemology. We're going to look up a lot of terms as we're learning. We're not going to know everything perfectly, but I definitely want to do it with high quality, to the best quality possible. But epistemology is the theory or knowledge, especially with regards to its methods, values, and scope. Epistemology is the investigation of what distinguishes justified beliefs from opinion. So that is a very philosophical territory. It sounds more like judiciary, sounds something that is relevant to law, which may be some common ground there. But that's something else that we could ask. But since we're focusing on math and computer science, I think I'll save that maybe for another video or for another time in my future work. I might even keep that knowledge for myself. But I would encourage anyone to explore who has an interest in studying law. We can quickly check. I mean, mine as well. We're here. Epistemology used to studying law? It sounds like it is. Yes, epistemology, the study of knowledge, is crucial to understanding law, giving rise to the field of legal epistemology. Okay, all right, that answers that question. And just to review, it's the investigation of what distinguishes justified beliefs from opinions, which frankly could be applied to a number of things, not just, I mean, it even sounds like it could apply to the world of rationality, frankly, according to what I've read so far from Rob Bensinger. Bensinger, really, excuse me if I mispronounced that, Rob Bensinger, I think is his name. Okay, we got other things here in philosophy. Epistemic logic and rational behavior. Okay, so maybe this little corner here is the world of rationality. Maybe it's not as big as I thought it was. And as epistemic logic, what is epistemic? Related knowledge or the degree of its validation. Okay, not very clear to me. Sounds kind of vague, frankly. We'll keep flowing, right? We want to stay in a good flow state while we're learning. Recognize that we don't understand everything 100%, and we can always come back and brush up on this. And that's what these video series are likely going to be about. Is we're going to have to reread or brush up on concepts multiple times until it finally sinks in. And so in a way, this is kind of like a lecture series, but I don't want to format it, or I don't want to call it a lecture. Frankly, I don't find lectures to be very appealing ways to learn. But it really depends on the lecturer, frankly. I know that people like what's his name? Freeman? Feynman. I think his name was Richard Feynman, who had incredible lectures on physics, and I watched a few of them online. And he's just, I mean, the way he's like poetic about how he describes rainbows, and his equations were used in like a deep insight in quantum mechanics. Um, what will happen here? But the Feynman lectures are really good. If I was studying physics and I was to dedicate all my energy to physics, which at one point I thought I was going to do, I was at one point willing to learn all of the Feynman lectures, but instead I studied chemical engineering. I went a different path. But I think one of the during my time and during my years where I was really dedicated to studying physics, I can't help but notice that studying physics has deep philosophical implications, and the most meaningful conversations I have had with physicists are philosophical in nature. I just wanted to take a note of that. Anyways, we have a few other areas of philosophy to cover. Decision theory and confirmation theory. I'm not sure what these are, but they take up a lot of space according to this map. I'm not sure what these nodes are. These nodes might be research papers. Like I say, this article is really interesting, or this image is really interesting, and it might be worth reading. Maybe dedicating a video to watching the full publication. Something else to point out, like my learning style is all over the place. I feel like I have a very strategic focus, but when it comes to learning little details, I'm like bouncing around like a hamster or something like that. Um, and so I recognize that my teaching style is all over the place, or my information processing style is all over the place. I used to think that I had ADHD. I might actually still have ADHD of some kind. Irrelevant. I am here explaining myself, which is not the purpose of this video, or of these video series, but I do think I want to just simply address the importance of learning, the art of learning. And so I find that articulating my ideas and communicating what I'm learning helps me stay a lot more focused. And so I even have a timer right now, and I didn't even start the timer. Oops, I meant to start that timer. Unless I had it somewhere else. If I did, I don't know where. Maybe here? No. Okay, so I meant to start that timer. But the idea is that I was going to do 30-minute sections, and work in 30-minute intervals. But what seems to be more effective, I think, in the long term, is simply working until the task is done. But of course, that requires more mental stamina, the ability to work through a long problem. So if you stop this video at some point, props to you for being able to watch even 10 to 15 minutes of this video if you have attention span problems. But the idea of these videos is that you can watch the entire thing. It's all located in one place. It's easier to edit and upload and so forth. And all the information is being put in one place. But maybe I do try to break it up into 30-minute intervals for the sake of my own mental stamina, and that I don't kind of experience a burnout or something like this. Um, but I wanted to take note of that. Um, Anyways, this particular published document or published paper says when philosophy of science meets formal methods, a citation analysis of early approaches between research fields. I really do think it's going to be worth our time to dedicate some energy to reading this research paper. And this is a message to other scientists, right? And so I could break it up into smaller parts, part one, part two, part three, but I'm thinking it might be easier to kind of do it all in one go. And so, anyways, let's get back to this diagram here and kind of finish this diagram. We have a few other philosophies, but I was curious to know what these nodes are. I'm not sure what they are. Um, excuse me. We have philosophy. Excuse me. We have philosophy of psychology and cognitive science. That makes a lot of sense. I would think it would take up more space. Philosophy of biology. Here we go. This is a very specific field of science. Philosophy of science, reduction, and causality takes up a massive amount of space. What is reduction? Um, let's look up what reduction is. The action or fact of making a specified thing smaller or less in amount. Okay, it's like simplification in a sense. Um, that's my understanding of it. We've got philosophy of science, another philosophy of science, realism and anti-realism. Okay, not sure what kind of science these might be. I would think these are more like scientific tools. Another thing I'll point out is that when you get a PhD, you're getting a doctorate of philosophy. So I feel like you're getting you're basically declaring yourself an expert or a master, is a better way to put it. 10,000 hours of effort that was put into some node on this big map here. And then we finally have the philosophy of physics. Again, I would think this one would be much larger. Given my relationship with physics, I would think it's a much larger space. Then we have another one, the philosophy of science, logic of just and discovery. So another area of logic. I don't know if epistemology, epistemic logic and rational behavior, decision theory, confirmation theory. I don't know if any of them are philosophies of science. I really don't know. But I would think that this whole thing would be a philosophy of science. That's my understanding. And then the biggest one, or one of the biggest ones, is this philosophy of mathematics, right? And this makes a lot of sense. I think it's the biggest one because it kind of goes into this territory over here. It overlaps with physics, it overlaps with realism and anti-realism, but it seems to be pretty isolated from reduction and causality. And I'm like, that seems kind of odd. Um, and then, yeah, so philosophy of mathematics is a big one. And then we got this one here called Lewis. I'm not sure what's going on there, named after a person. And then metaphysics, which seems to be more or less, it overlaps with decision theory, confirmation theory. It definitely overlaps with mathematics. It's overlapping with logic, but it doesn't overlap with physics. And I find that very bizarre. So, anyways, let's answer now the ChatGPT questions, and or we find the answers, and let's see what we end up getting. But the purpose of this video, if you can't tell already, is dedicated to studying reason and rationality, I guess philosophy. The goal is to study rationality, but we're kind of doing a sort of a, um, you know, you could call it a pregame if you're someone who goes to parties and drinks a lot, and if you're American. But another way to put it would be, we are doing a prerequisite. Not as exciting to call it a prerequisite, but that's what the universities do when it comes to courses. But what I would say, we're doing kind of like a prep work. Prepping a meal. And we're preparing certain ingredients. And right now, the ingredients that we're preparing include understanding philosophy, understanding reason. I think those are the main two, in an effort to understand what rationality is. So we're getting closer to our objective. Is rationality and reasoning the same thing? Let's find out. They're closely related, but not exactly the same thing. Reason is the capacity or process of thinking logically. Okay, I would think that's what rationality is. So reasoning is logical. Okay, I'm not gonna even read all of this. Rationality is more about how well reason is used, often in relation to goals, evidence, or consistency. It's about making decisions that align with logic and evidence, choosing appropriate means to achieve an end, avoiding contradictory or fallacies. I don't want to get wet, so I'll wait until the rain stops. That's being rational. That's acting rationally based on reasoning. Okay, so I guess reasoning is a tool for rationality. Interesting. I'm sure we could spend more time on all of this, frankly, but we're simply gonna just skim through it very lightly. Keep it as light as possible, since we're covering a lot of information. What is the relationship of rationality and reason with intuition? Rationality, reason, and intuition are distinct but interdependent ways humans think and decide. A clearer way to understand their relationship is to see them as different levels or modes of cognition rather than opposites. It's basically see them at different levels or modes of cognition rather than opposites. Okay, so intuition might be deeper. Reason is conscious, deliberate, step by step, uses logic. Okay, intuition is fast. I wouldn't say intuition is fast. I would say intuition is pretty slow, actually. Automatic, non conscious, based on pattern recognition, experience, and emotion. I really want to emphasize experience. The more experience you have, I think the easier it is to develop an intuition for things. You need like experience exposure to have a good feel for how that thing works. A great example are video games. If you're playing like a superhero video game and you're trying to get a feel for like the power abilities of that hero, you know, you need to have a lot of experience observing what the hero can do, what are their moves, what are their combos, and so on. So I think experience is very important for intuition, to develop a good intuition. And then finally, we have where rationality fits in. Rationality refers to how well decisions align with logic, evidence, and goals, can involve both reason and intuition. You can be rational by reasoning carefully or by trusting a well calibrated intuition. Interesting. I'm not sure if this is entirely true, frankly, because I already disagreed with the intuition of one response. But again, this was just one attempt, one shot in the dark, basically, into the pool of human knowledge and seeing what comes out. A common model used in psychology and philosophy, intuition generates ideas, options, or judgments. Reason evaluates, justifies, or corrects them. Rationality measures the overall coherence and effectiveness. Okay. So now let's follow up with this next question and saying, is rationality... So my guess was that rationality, the difference between reason and rationality, are that reason is more intuitive, while rationality is more focused on objective structures of thinking. And I would say there's some truth in that. Maybe the statement that reason is not necessarily intuitive, that might be wrong. But rationality can combine reason and intuition both. I think that's the takeaway. Is rationality an umbrella term for philosophy? Let's see that. This is the next question, and this is going to tie up, basically our connection with this map over here. Now, something that has definitely frustrated me when I've gone through school myself is that I find that like a lot of teachers will skip out on a lot of important details. And I think just because of the nature of time, for the sake of time or for the sake of cognitive focus, we're not going to work together on every single thing. But I want to encourage my audience to use ChatGPT, use AI, use Google, use sources, and ask these questions. Be curious, and patiently and calmly and with confidence and with grace find the answers to your questions. I know you can do it. If you have any kind of doubt in that process, I want to be someone who can tell you and tell you what you need to hear, which is that you can absolutely do it, but you have to go for it, give it a shot. It's okay to make failures, it's okay to make mistakes. That's part of the learning process. So I think what we'll do is, let's see how long we're working on time right now. I think we've been working for about 20 minutes. I think I actually have a call to make. But I think what I'll do is answer this last question here, and then we'll wrap it up here. And then I think on the next part of this video, or the next part of this series, I'm going to dedicate it a bit more towards the work of Rob Bensinger. Bensinger, excuse me. So let's see what this question says here. The short answer is no, really. Rationality is not an umbrella term for philosophy, though it is one of philosophy's central concerns. Here's how they relate. What philosophy is broadly: philosophy is an umbrella discipline concerned with what exists, what we can know, how should we reason, how we should act, meaning, language, mind, science, art, etc. And this definition actually lines up pretty nicely with this map that we have here. So I like how those two kind of verify one another if we're looking at like evidence-based learning, basically. Rationality plays a role in many of these areas, but it doesn't contain them all. What rationality is? Rationality refers to the norms or standards of good thinking and decision making, coherence between beliefs, evidence, reasons, and goals. It answers questions like, what should I believe? What should I do, given my goals and information? This makes rationality a subject of philosophy, not philosophy itself. A subject of philosophy, but not philosophy itself. Okay. Where rationality sits inside of philosophy. I feel like my understanding right now is that rationality is like the butter of the meal that you're preparing. You know, it's like this coagulative substance that kind of holds together all these different concepts. That's kind of where the way I'm seeing it. That may not be the most rational answer for all I know. Rationality is mainly studied in logic, epistemology, decision theory, ethics. I mean, that covers a lot of territory. It's definitely applied in also mathematics and physics and any other field of science. But philosophy also includes areas where rationality is not the main focus. Metaphysics, the nature of time, interesting. Aesthetics, phenomenology, existentialism. Why people sometimes think it is. Rationality often feels like an umbrella term because philosophy emphasizes arguments and reasons. Absolutely. Philosophical claims are validated rationally. Okay. Right. So, like I'm saying, rationality is a tool. Many philosophical traditions prioritize rational justification, but philosophy also criticizes rationality. Very interesting. Explores its limits, examines non-rational aspects of human life. A helpful analogy. Philosophy is the entire field of inquiry, while rationality is one of its core tools and topics. Okay. Philosophy uses rationality, but rationality does not use philosophy. Fair enough. In one line, rationality is a central concept within philosophy, not a label for philosophy itself. Okay. So I think that's definitely insightful. Definitely insightful. If you like, I could also explain how different philosophical traditions, rationalism, empiricism, existentialism, Eastern philosophy, my goodness, treat rationality differently. Audience folks, thank you for listening. I hope this was interesting. But this is the first of many videos that are dedicated to exploring what rationality is, how we can use rationality to the best of our ability. But along the way, we're learning about reasoning, we're learning about what philosophy is, we're trying to have an intuitive understanding of all these different concepts. And ultimately, we can apply this knowledge or apply these techniques, this skill set, apply this intuition, this rational intuition, if such a thing can exist, and apply it to mathematics, computer science, and ultimately something like Cliodynamics. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this was interesting, and I'll see you all in the next video. Before we wrap it up, can there be a rational intuition? You know, is this possible? Final question, for bonus question for the AI here. Yes, rational intuition is not only possible; it's a well-established idea in both philosophy and cognitive science. And then of course we get quite a in-depth answer. Maybe I'll save this for the next part of the video, and we can start there. But yeah, comments and questions below. I love hearing from you guys, guys and gals. And I will see y'all in the next video. Happy studying and Godspeed. Thank you.